description of the significance of the Moravian values.
The core issue is that when we do mission, we do it as a communion, we do it in the community. We are, as a church, also a community, and as a church, we are World Communion. This is our tool for mission, that is the church.
And what is the difference between communion and community?
Well, community is a structure in which we live as communion. Communion is being together, and as we heard, being a church communion, well, it's belonging to the same church. In that church we are together, but in order to live, we need to have a structure. We need to live a community with rules and different, the way we do things and so on, traditions.
Ever imagined. A great and divine light exists inside of you. Notice that spirit sounds similar to words like inspire.
You know, Jesus had problems with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And once Jesus said, you go out there and make people worse than yourselves. So in mission, what are we doing? Are we teaching people to be like us? Or are we helping people to be better than we are? And I think that's a big challenge for us.
Families, that was the last number I got. It may be more. 45, thank you. I told you, it's never current or added additional grades to accommodate more students. I think in this day and age, one, that it doesn't have so much to do with evangelism or outreach, but more with sustainability of missions, is the feeding of what's called the feeding of the 5,000, but it was many more because there were women and children, with the idea that they were able to start with what they had, not focus on what they didn't have, and be willing to bring that and give that to God, and then God blesses it, and then we go out in ministry. And I think that's so important, especially when there are places in our Moravian world where there are not a lot of economic and financial resources, and people can think, well, what can we do? We don't have anything. Start with what we have, and then see how that can grow.
That was the biblical principle. Could you also mention a Moravian principle that's important for you?
One of the Moravian principles that's really important, it's kind of a combination of Zinzendorf and Comenius. Zinzendorf, of course, was had a lot of zeal for the winning souls for the Lamb, and that's still very much part of Moravian missions today, of outreach and evangelism and preaching. But then Comenius also focusing on the mind and on our life in general. And so we see that we have hospitals and schools and institutions of learning and organizations that seek to not only preach the gospel, but help people live the gospel and be touched by the gospel in other ways.
Redemption song, that's catchy. That's also the one. And you really can't do Bob Marley, you can't do Peter Tosh. The good old Holy Spirit in us is something that's been there. It's who we are. As Caribbean people, our music, the reggae, the calypso, the kaiso, as we say, all of these things are part of who we are. And I mentioned as well in the presentation that the 1860-61 revival, the spiritual revival that took place and spread throughout the Caribbean, actually started in the Moravian Church in Carmel in Jamaica. So
That was just after the liberation from slavery.
From slavery, some
Yeah.
30-something years later. And it wasn't until, I think, 1909, somewhere around there, that Pentecostalism actually came to the Caribbean. So by the time what is known as Pentecostalism came to the Caribbean, we were already at that point. So it sort of fitted in and blended in with where we were already. So it wasn't new to us.
Supernatural healer, mighty, mighty, supernatural, mighty, mighty, supernatural healer.